Well, folks, it's time for another AMA with Hearthstone developer Iksar, and this time around we got conversation about tournament mode and lots more, of course, but let's jump into it. All right, Immick here asks, what's the focus now that Mercenaries is out the door? They've been citing for a long time. That's been kind of the main focus for a lot of different people, particularly probably on the technical side in Hearthstone. And now it's done. So Iksar says Battlegrounds work for cosmetics and some progression stuff for Battlegrounds. That sounds pretty cool. We've got, all these other systems and like Mercenaries where you get rewards as you progress. And of course, standards. Having that in Battlegrounds might be nice as your rank goes up. You could perhaps get some bonuses. I don't know what that'd be in Battlegrounds. Right now, it's only cosmetics and stuff. There's no like packs or currencies to get, so curious where that lands. Also, though, in the prototype stages for different modes of Battlegrounds. Now, that sounds cool. I've always thought, actually, one thing I'd like to do is like a single-player Battlegrounds or like an uncapped Battlegrounds. You can just keep working on and refining your team and getting like harder and harder opponents where the game just scales up and it's like, I beat level 50 of the Battlegrounds single player. I beat level 65 with this crazy team. Those sorts of things I thought would be cool. So anyway, some modes coming. And also tournaments for Battlegrounds in client that could translate to other modes as well. Tournament mode has long been one of the most requested features in Hearthstone. So it sounds like it's a real possibility here. Still early. None of this would ever be sure. You can't say anything with 100% certainty, but tournament mode might be on the way, which I would certainly welcome. I'd love to run some community tournaments in client if it's handling all the heavy lifting and hard work. That makes it much, much easier. It says all things being worked on, talked about, but not quite set in stone. Also looking for client improvements and better support for expansion releases. I don't know exactly what that means, but it's exciting. I love expansion releases. Sounds good. Support that. Client improvements, definitely a good deal. The client is in a rough spot. So many bugs, so many little things going wrong, disconnects, and just craziness. So a lot of mobile problems I hear about all the time. So we definitely need some improvements there. I'm glad that there's a little bit of a consolidation phase here happening with Hearthstone where we got the big thing out. Now let's go back and let's fix the things we've got. Seems like that's been overdue for a few years now. So very welcome news to hear this from Iksar. So next up, here's a question about graveyards in Hearthstone. Iksar essentially says it's been prototyped even fairly recently and in multiple cases, but just haven't quite found the excitement yet for the gameplay of graveyards to make it worth it. So probably the right like expansion theme or perfect execution of the mechanic is when we'd finally see some real graveyard implementation in Hearthstone. He also teased like Naxxramas being something they could revisit in the near future. So maybe there'll be like an Naxxramas revisit expansion in a few years or a couple of years or in the next year. And graveyards could certainly be a big part of something like that. Well, the mini set is still coming. It turns out as we expected. It seems like this Mercenaries patch kind of got in the way. My guess for the mini set date would be October 26th. Based on this, that sounds a little early. This isn't quite that big of a tease, so maybe like November 2nd. But I sure hope it comes soon. I haven't played Standard literally at all in October. I've only played Duels and Mercenaries, so I'm certainly ready for a refresh. Can we see more characters from Warcraft 1? Iksar says all those characters are too big and awesome not to use. They cited Garona Blackhand and Orgrim Doomhammer, specifically across Warcraft 1 and 2. And the smiley face here is what I want to focus on. Smiley faces, man, I feel like smiley faces mean that stuff's coming like sooner rather than later. So I wouldn't be shocked if one or two of these show up in like the next expansion based on the smiley face. Obviously that is baseless speculation, but I don't care. I believe in the smiley. So here's a question from Fino, talking about golden card designs. I don't know who made these, but somewhere along the way, somebody proposed these golden cards that showcase more of the class color. It might be kind of hard to see these. I can probably try to zoom in here a little bit for you. Essentially, weaving in like the green and stuff. Right now, golden cards just have that tiny little banner at the bottom. Iksar says he likes the look and will bring it up with the art director. I'll say one thing about golden cards that I've always thought could be a different change is they still look kind of ratty and like, broken in. They have all these little cracks and creases and chips out of them. I thought it'd be kind of cool if golden cards looked pristine instead of looking like, the normal Hearthstone cards. So I wouldn't mind a golden card refresh. There's some, if somebody hates it more and they liked the old versions better and they spent a lot of money or dust to get the old versions, like there's some risk of negative experiences there. So I don't know how much Blizzard would risk that disruption. I don't care personally. I'm cool with whatever, but that's the sort of thing that could definitely stop this implementation in Blizzard's mind, I think. I thought this one was funny, asking if we can unnerf Bloodbloom, and Iksar basically just totally shuts down the idea. Bloodbloom is indeed a dangerous card, and I totally agree. Bloodbloom's scary. You can break the game in so many different ways with that much mana cheat that efficiently. So have to agree here. Bloodbloom needs to stay at 4 mana. Maybe it could even be nerfed again in the future. Who knows with the way things work, but I don't want to see that one revisited. All right, so this next one's a really good question about Ignite, and it's a pretty insightful question, too, from the person asking it. So it's basically regarding the notion of capping Ignite. If you maybe limit it to like 3 times, it could shuffle in to reduce or I guess eliminate its infinite nature, so that, say, like attrition-style decks, like a really fatigue greedy warrior or something, would have a chance against Ignite. Would that be valuable? And it's acknowledged in the question here that wouldn't really change the power level of the card too much, because usually the mage is winning games with just a few ignites. It's not like they need 10 ignites in their deck. 2, 3, 4 is usually sufficient to kill their opponent, because Quest Mage just blows you up. Having 1 or 2 in deck can be nice, but as you get to 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and so on, it's really quite diminishing returns. So Iksar agrees that the kind of real game average impact of that change would be pretty low, but he thinks there's some value in the notion of a deck or a card being able to go infinite. In other words, mage players really value this idea of having this kind of infinite out, and they build their deck in a way that encourages that, and it's fun for them. And then the people on the other side of that, say like the attrition decks, the control warriors of the world or whatever, have this very rare experience where like 1 in 30 games or something, they play a mage that has this like infinite ignite scenario, and that's why they lose. And that's pretty limited because it's like, first off, a rare sort of deck archetype, particularly at the moment, these like attrition decks, and they're just not that likely to queue into a mage. And frankly, the mage is often going to beat them just off of raw damage anyway. They don't need that many ignites. So all in all, Iksar is suggesting here that the value to the mage player of having this really fun deck centerpiece idea thing happening with these infinite ignites, the potential of that, the fun in exploring that deck space is probably more valuable than the hit that these attrition players take, that the negative experiences are kind of outweighed by the positives of Ignite being infinite. And you know what? I actually am convinced. I sort of have to agree. I love attrition decks. If it were up to me individually and personally, I would burn Ignite at the stake. I would ignite. I would get rid of it because I want to be able to go infinite and grind people down with fatigue and armor. I really like that style of play. But ultimately, in a sort of utilitarian sense, I understand that that's both less popular than something like Mage, and there is indeed value in like having this idea of infiniteness, and that's going to crop up every game, as Iksar points out. Like that potential exists every game for the Mage, whereas that limitation, that negative experience, exists very occasionally for, say, that attrition deck. So, it's always meta dependent in popularity, and there's context to all of these things. Like if Mage became really popular, or if there was this awesome kind of control deck that could exist and Mage was holding it back, that's always worth consideration, and maybe you could change your perspective. But I guess in current day Hearthstone, I actually think I have to agree with this. Now, that said, I'm sure a lot of you don't agree with this and you think Ignite is terrible, which I'm curious to hear those perspectives as well. Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Maybe you think the negative experiences here outweigh the positives, but do note this is a conversation about it being infinite specifically, not a conversation about power level in general. So try to keep your thoughts to the infinite side of Ignite as opposed to like the power level of Quest Mage, for instance. Here's an interesting question. Why do pre-purchase bundles for expansions come with Battlegrounds perks? Iksar says basically it was just about giving enough value to the people who pre-ordered because they wanted to make sure it felt nice and valuable. I have to agree, it was a nice bonus for me. It saves me because I play some Battlegrounds. I want the perks. So that's cool. Not everybody, though, gets that value because some people don't care about Battlegrounds if they're pre-ordering the expansion. But the important part of this is that in the future, they're going to change it potentially so that Constructed gives you constructed stuff. So instead of getting Battlegrounds perks, maybe you'll get a couple legendaries or something instead. Who knows? I don't know what the equivalent value is, which I think a lot of people would certainly welcome. For me, it would actually in some cases make the game more expensive because I'd have to go buy the Battlegrounds perks. But ultimately, I think most of you would be happy with this change if you got all constructed stuff when you pre-ordered. If not, share your thoughts, or if so, curious if that would be a good change for most of you out there. Sometimes I have hard time envisioning what people want from purchases. Ultimately, I think the value of purchases needs to continue to climb. Hearthstone remains an expensive game, and I still don't really feel like when I spend money, I'm getting a huge value return. I think Hearthstone's a better free-to-play system than it's been in a long time. I think I get so much gold now, but purchases still just feel a little underwhelming. So let's increase those purchase values. So here's a question about sandboxes in Hearthstone. This is one we've talked about a lot, how much fun it would be to have a sandbox, tweaking card values or rule sets, all these sorts of things. And Iksar agrees it's a good idea, but basically it's just so much work. It sounds like something that's almost never going to happen. I mean, he likes the idea, but it's just, think about how much work it would be. Seems impossible to me. Like, you know, say like Mercenaries, right? The Mercenaries has been touted as this just like enormous Herculean effort on so many fronts by the Hearthstone team. And it's not anything that crazy to us as players. Like, I know there's a lot of work behind the scenes. I'm not dismissing the work, but you know, a sandbox mode would be 1,000 times more work because there's just so many things that have to go into it from UI standpoints. All these different levers that players can pull, all that has to be controlled for. It would just be enormous, incalculable effort. So I don't think we'll ever really see a sandbox in Hearthstone, or if we do, maybe like 15 years from now or something, when they just really, really have to push for user-generated content. Although it would certainly be welcome. So here's a question about tournament mode. Again, since Iksar teased it previously in that other question, he's just clarifying. It's definitely something they want. It's being talked about, but they haven't started it yet. So don't expect it soon. Usually these sorts of things have like a year plus runway once they've kind of gotten planned out and then implemented. So maybe like 2 years from now would we finally see tournament mode. And then it sounds like that's going to be Battlegrounds to start. And then, you know, moving on from there. But I'm just glad it's back on the table because for so long there, tournament mode is like they promised it. And then they said, no, it's never going to happen. We decided against it. And it was almost like a pain point. It seemed like they almost hated talking about it or addressing it because I think players complained about it a lot. So the fact that it's back on the table alone is big news, and excited to see where it goes. Hey, look, dual class cards are coming back. I love dual class cards. I think they're awesome. And the fact that this says more details soonish makes me think maybe dual class cards in the mini set, maybe dual class cards in third expansion of the year. Maybe in the core set next year. I don't know, but soonish to me implies like next 6 months, you know, not like a year down the road. So that's good news. So here's a question about what's next after Mercenaries. And, you know, the previous one we talked about sort of consolidation and going back and tidying up Hearthstone. This still implies there's some stuff on the horizon, though. At least one medium big thing in progress. Who knows what medium big thing means? I would say that feels like maybe less than a game mode. He's talked about like social features and stuff before. So maybe some kind of social features in Hearthstone, guilds or who knows what, but something like that, I would guess. And then beyond that, planning for the next big thing. So maybe that's a game mode. Maybe that's the social features. Maybe those are bigger than I think. Who knows? But still moving forward, that's good news that things are on the way. All right, and this is a strange question. Our friend Magic Milk, who actually just asked the last question as well, says, if Regis Card was a Hearthstone card, what would his design be, and why would that art be a majestic bearded dwarf riding a noble Ultrasaur stallion? We all know I would actually be a 0-mana 0/2 with no effect. just a fat little 0-mana minion on board. So Iksar says his mind comes to performing for your opponent. Do a thing. If your opponent liked it, do it again. Get a bonus, maybe. Start there, defining what my opponent liking my performance means. So I went ahead and threw out this idea based on his inspiration there. I said, battle cry, add a random minion to each player's hand. If the opponent's costs more, repeat this battle cry, with the notion that, you know, it'd be fun to give people a bunch of random cards. And if theirs is better, a higher cost minion, they'll like that action and we'll do it again, right? So basically dancing for my opponent, giving them minions, and making the game result in some real shenanigans. So I don't know if that'd be a healthy card for Hearthstone, but perhaps a fitting one. 0 mana, 0/2 at that. All right, so that wraps it up here for this AMA. Of course, as always, share your thoughts down below. Excited to get everybody's takes on these responses. Big shout out to Iksar, as always, for venturing into the lion's den here and being willing to tell us all this crazy stuff. You know, not everybody loves his responses all the time. I get it, but you have to respect the fact that he's out here communicating, risking hate and vitriol from people. So much love to Iksar for putting himself out there and giving us a chance to talk through all this stuff. So yeah, thanks as always for watching. Stay tuned for next week. Hopefully we'll have another one of these. And until next time, game on.